Hi, welcome back to the Bible Project podcast. And we're in part 14 of our journey together through the book of Genesis. And the title of today's episode is Creation, Day 4, covering the text from Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19. I'd like to remind you that the transcript of all the podcasts is available in a link in the podcast notes section of the audio version of any one of these podcasts. The passage we're going to look at this time covers the section of Scripture that deals with what are described as Day 4 of the creation story. We've covered days 1 to 3 so far, so let's begin by picking up the text in verse 14 on Day 4, where it says this: "And God said, Let there be lights in the vaults of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so." So let's pause for a moment and look at the beginning of this fourth day being described here. This is the creation of the starry heavens above. Light as a principle was created on day 1, but this is the creation of individual light-emitting and light-reflecting objects in the heavens above. In verse 3 it said, "Let there be light," singular, but here in verse 14 it says, "Let there be lights in the heavens," plural. So in verse 1, day 1, God endows his new creation with light. Day 2, God creates the heavens, and day 3, God separates the heavens above from the earth below. And now in day 4, what is being described is God populating the heavens with stars, galaxies, etc. At this point it also tells us the reason God created these heavenly objects. Firstly, to guide and divide the day from night. An additional second purpose is given in verse 14, where it says the sun and the moon and the stars are to be also given as signs, and they are to serve as signposts for the wonder of creation and point to the Creator. So the starry heavens are to be signs, not just something used for physical navigation, but for our spiritual navigation as well. They are meant to point to the wonder of the designer and the creator of the universe. The third purpose given is that they are created in order that humanity may be able to map out the seasons and the years. From the shortest measurement of a day through the seasons and even the longest measurement of a year, all these measurements can be determined by the movement of these heavenly objects. Finally, a fourth purpose is given in verse 15, and that is that they are to distribute light. The text then continues, and we're picking up in verses 16 to 19, where it says, "God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give life on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day." So there you have it. God again states that what he has done is good, which means good for the purpose for which he created it. Remember, this text was written into a cultural background and a time when everyone believed that man was subject to the prophecies dictated by the movements of the moon and stars. But we are told here that these stars were created by God for the purposes of the service for all humanity, which is a completely new perspective. In the Egyptian culture, man's destiny was dictated by the stars. And this revelation comes along and says, no, that's incorrect. God created these things that they might serve humanity, not that humanity should worship them or try to appease them or use them as a horoscope to try and predict the future. According to the pagans of Moses' day, these heavenly objects were to be worshipped. But this is saying that God says no, God made them so people could wonder and worship him. And that is why God is seen to pronounce them as good. So that is the fourth day. We shall return together next time to look at day 5 and then day 6. I look forward to seeing you here again very soon. Okay everyone, that's it for this time. Now the place to go for all the links to this ministry and other ministries and podcasts that I do is the podcast notes section of this podcast on the Buzzsprout website. There you'll find links to the Facebook page, my YouTube channel, the sister podcast, the Living in Faith Everyday podcast, and also links even to my SoundCloud page where I create the background music and sound design for this podcast. And there's also, even if you're that way inclined, a place where you can support the podcast and the other ministries to the tune of £1 a month, which really helps with the funding and costs of doing this. But other than that, I really trust you've been blessed by our time together, and I hope to see you all here again very soon.